The Pride of Navrongo. Wapia Chiarehura stepped off the air-conditioned bus from Accra into the dry, shimmering heat of Navrongo. The contrast was a physical slap. As a top student at Disan International School, she'd been forced into this cultural immersion project to pass her final year. Her bright pink, wheeled suitcase looked ridiculous on the rust-colored earth. She was to stay with a local family. Her host, Mama Azinma, a woman who looked carved from ancient mahogany, simply nodded at Wapia's polite, rehearsed greeting. She pointed at a compound of traditional, round mud brick homes. "Your room," she grunted. Wapia stared at the thatched roof, fighting tears. There was no Wi-Fi, no socket for her hair dryer, and a goat was currently trying to eat the hem of her designer skirt. This, she thought, was going to be the worst 6 weeks of her life. She was here to observe culture, like a biologist, not live in it. Wapia's first week was a disaster of quiet comedy. She approached her project with the detached confidence of a decent debater. She tried to interview the local women painting intricate patterns on the walls of the Sirigu tradition, but her questions, pulled from a sociology textbook, fell flat. "What is the socio-economic impact of your art?" she'd ask. They would just smile, offer her pito, which she politely declined, and continue working. She tried pounding fufu and sent the pestle flying into a nearby chicken coop, much to the silent, shaking laughter of the village children. Mama Azinma watched it all with an unreadable expression. Wipia was an alien, a ghost from the city. She knew how to get an A+ in Accra, but in Navrongo, she was failing at just being. The community was preparing for the annual the Fostna Festival of Our Senses, Talents, and Arts, but a shadow hung over the preparations. The main attraction was always the Weaving Guild, but this year, their participation was in doubt. Wapia, looking for a project angle, learned why. The guild's revered leader had passed away months prior, taking the secrets of the complex sunrise pattern with her. The remaining weavers, though skilled, couldn't replicate it. The centerpiece loom sat empty. Arrogantly, Wapia saw her opening. "I can help," she announced at a community meeting. "At Dison, we use software to analyze patterns. I can just figure it out." The elders stared at her with stony silence. A young weaver named Abandiware coughed. "You think our heritage is a password you can crack with your computer?" Humbled and furious, Wapia retreated. Her project was stalling, and she was now the village pariah. That night, unable to sleep in the heat, she wandered the compound. She found Mama Azinma in the weaving shed, sitting before the empty loom. The matriarch wasn't weeping, but her shoulders slumped with a weariness Wapia hadn't seen before. Beside her was an old, carved wooden chest, fastened with a heavy, rusted padlock. Wapia watched from the shadows as Mama Azinma touched the lock, her lips moving in a silent prayer, before she locked the shed and left. A new, non-academic curiosity sparked in Wapia. What was in that chest, and why did it hold the old woman's grief so tightly? Wapia changed her approach. She put her notepad away and picked up a broom. She helped carry water. She sat with the women painting, and this time, she just watched. After 3 days of silence, Mama Azinma gestured for Wapia to follow her to the shed. She produced a key from a fold in her cloth and opened the locked chest. It wasn't gold or jewels. It was full of numbers. Dozens of brittle, hand-drawn notebooks filled with grids, symbols, and sequences. Wapia looked confused. "This," Mama Azinma said, her voice thick, "is the sunrise pattern. My ancestress was a mathematician. She encoded the weaves. We don't just weave, we calculate. But the key, the logic, is lost. It wasn't a weaving pattern, it was an algorithm." This was a language Wapia understood. It wasn't sociology, it was pure logic. For the next week, Wapia and Abandiware, the skeptical weaver, were inseparable. Abandiware explained the loom, the thread counts, the tension. 1.Wepia sat with her laptop, finally charged by a sputtering generator, cross-referencing the notebooks, building a database, and seeing the logic emerge. It was a complex binary system, using colors as variables. The commodity was 1.Wepia, covered in thread, arguing with Abandyware about syntax errors in a 100-year-old weave. The drama was the race against time. The breakthrough came when 1.Wepia realized a symbol they thought meant skip actually meant invert. Suddenly, the algorithm clicked. She printed out the first new sequence. The shed became a hub of frantic, joyful energy. The older weavers, guided by 1.Wepia's printouts and Abandyware's piece translations, began to thread the great loom. It was a fusion of worlds, ancient knowledge filtered through modern technology, brought back to life by traditional hands. 1.Wepia wasn't the distant outsider anymore. She was Eniela, daughter, the girl who could speak to the ancestors through her computer box. She ran spreadsheets to track dialogues, organized weaving shifts, and even learned to tie the essential knots herself. They weren't just recreating the old pattern. Inspired, started adding to the algorithm, creating a new variation. The centerpiece was no longer a copy, but an evolution. They worked until their fingers were raw, finishing just as the drums for the festival began. The Faustna opening was crowded. Chiefs from neighboring districts, tourists, and the entire community gathered before the covered loom. Mama Azinma stood at the center. She didn't make a speech. She simply nodded to 1.Wepia, who, standing with Abandyware, pulled the covering cloth away. There was a gasp. The sunrise pattern glowed in vibrant threads, more complex and beautiful than anyone remembered. But at its center was Abandyware's new design. A pattern of interlocking symbols representing the traditional calabash, and a new, sharp-edged symbol, a computer key. It was a masterpiece. That day, 1.Wepia's project was forgotten. Instead, she was called before the Navrongo chief Asajipari II, also known as Navropio. She was not called as a student, but as an innovator. Mrs. Kate Asangalise presented her with a small, woven bracelet. 1.Wepia Chigabaje of Nosinia. The granddaughter of Mama Anyuga, Chera Wura, had come to Navrongo to observe culture. But she left having helped save it, becoming, in the process, the pride of her land of birth. After the festival, Uncle Chugu were honored with a surprise party at the Meaga Hotel.